Yo, what up, TCK Potters? Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, for another episode of the Candlestick Kids Fantasy Football Podcast, aka TCK Pod. Have very special guests this evening. Joining me is the Commish crew. Chris and Eric of the Commish FFP will be joining in just a little bit. You can find them on all avenues: Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. They also have their own podcast, Commish FFP. Go check them out. Good friends of the show. Before we get into the episode today, I just want to give thanks to everybody tuning in here. This is episode 389. We're only 10 away after this from 400. We have something special planned for you, and I'm very, very excited for that. If you haven't yet, please make sure to give us a subscribe right here on YouTube. Jump in the comments section. We will get to as many comments and questions live on air as possible. And make sure to also give us a rate and review anywhere you listen to your podcast. Follow on social medias as well, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You know what to do. I appreciate it. Episode 400 coming up here quite quickly. Very excited about this. Today we're going to be breaking down the rookie rundowns for the AFC East and the AFC West. And to do that, I'm very excited to bring in our AFC East family. So without any further ado, we'll bring in the Commish boys. I want to welcome back to the program once again, Chris and Eric from the Commish Fantasy Football Podcast. Boys, how are you feeling? It's really great to have you back on the program.
Thanks, man. Yeah, feeling pretty good. Eric, how you doing? You're on mute, big guy.
Got you on mute, brother.
Sorry, I'm just prepping for when I get all worked up. So I gotta be
It's good to have you boys back. Thank you for coming in. This is we have one more division to get into, which I'll handle on the next episode. We're actually going to have another member of the Commish family jumping on the next episode. RJ of the Dynasty side of you guys will be jumping on to handle the AFC South. He is a Colts fan, and I wanted to kind of give him that division to break it down. And then he and I are also going to spend some time looking at the Dynasty speculations of the NFL draft and what we can look forward to in a bunch of these rookie situations. But you guys, of course, are the House Patriots fans, and I wanted to let you jump in on the AFC East. There's no surprise that I'm a big Justin Herbert fan myself, as you can see behind me, so I wanted to tackle the AFC West. Before we get into it, guys, I wanted to ask you real quick, like, off-season so far, it's only May, of course, but what are maybe just one storyline or one thing that you guys are either surprised about, looking forward to? Is there one particular rookie throughout all of camp so far? I know it's only been a week or so, but any storyline or somebody really popping off for you so far? Maybe you've been through a dynasty draft already. You were excited to get value on somebody. Obviously, there's the main headlines, the Rodgers and the Watson and all that, but I want to stay away from that for this episode. Anything other than that stuff that you've been excited for so far following the NFL draft over the last couple of weeks? Chris, we can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll stay in our hometown here. New England, obviously, there's a potential quarterback controversy going on. So I think that's going to be an interesting situation to see play out. I've seen everything from Mac Jones is going to be starting week 1 to, Mac Jones coming out and saying this is Cam's team effectively, and, he's just here to support. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this is going to play out. I also find it interesting that the Pats just signed, we'll talk about this, when we talk about the Patriots, but the Pats just signed Brian Hoyer for a 1-year deal, which means I think Jarrett Stidham's out. So, the quarterback room is getting a little crowded, so it'll be interesting to see how that all works this offseason.
Absolutely. And first controversy at the quarterback position in New England for I'm going to say probably the mid-90s, right? I mean, once Bledsoe was there, it was his team. And then, of course, there wasn't a controversy with Brady. Brady came in because of an injury, and then he held off Bledsoe, and the rest is history. But the Patriots haven't actually been, battling for the quarterback position, unless you count last year. But it was pretty much Cam there. So it'll be very interesting. First time in about 25, 30 years there in New England. That'll be interesting. Eric, how about you, man? Any interesting off-season storylines so far?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest ones that I was surprised about was the fact that Miami didn't address the running back position in the draft. And everybody who was sitting on Myles Gaskin shares was pretty much rejoicing when Miami pretty much, just didn't address the position at all, even in free agency. I don't know how long he'll last as their RB1, but anybody who did hold on him, it definitely paid off.
Absolutely. And I don't know that he's going to last through the offseason as well. I mean, guys are going to get cut. I mean, the 49ers have 7 running backs 2 or 3 of them at least are going to get cut. And any of those guys, Wayne Gallman, even maybe it's Raheem Mostert, just with the age, maybe it's Jermichael Hasty, who's kind of, loose in the totem pole with 2 rookies coming in. That guy could end up in Atlanta or Miami. Of course, there's a new picture of Mike Davis coming out looking like the Hulk. We get one of those every single season. But Myles Gaskin, let's not forget. I mean, he's a 6th, 7th rounders with him and Savon Ahmed out of Washington. So good players, but not draft capital, and certainly not with the coaching staff. So worried about those guys long term. But yes, in Dynasty, you can at least breathe for a little bit. So that will be interesting. But I'm not sure that Myles Gaskin or Mike Davis survive all the way through draft season. I just don't see that happening. But as of right now, you're good. To be honest, if it's me and I have Mike Davis or I have Myles Gaskin, I'm looking to trade either one of them straight up. I mean, 2nd rounders minimum. If you can get somehow 1st round capital or flip it for a younger veteran, somebody that you believe in long term, or maybe up and coming wide receiver that like a Jerry Jeudy or somebody that didn't splash last year but could have long term potential. I'm absolutely making that move versus counting my blessings that I was able to fall into those guys, because I really just don't see it happening. And even if it does, there probably will be some sort of a committee long term. All right, boys, let's jump into this here. I'm going to kick it off with the AFC West, and I just start alphabetically here. We've been doing this for the last couple episodes. Bobby and I were breaking down a handful of them, and I'm going to start here with the Broncos. Again, we're only talking about the fantasy relevant rookies that came in. Of course, there's been a number of offseason moves for various teams. We'll kind of, wind those in as we can. And there's some big time question marks. Of course, we talk about the Broncos right now. Everybody, is potentially thinking that maybe Aaron Rodgers ends up there. We're a long way from that, so I'm not really going to put that into my analysis today. But we'll start here in the 2nd round, 3rd pick in the 2nd round, Javonte Williams out of North Carolina, running back. They also take Seth Williams out of Auburn, a wide receiver, 35th pick in the 6th round. Seth Williams is very easy. He's a burner, nearly 4.2 speed. He's going to add some depth. Cortland Sutton's coming back this year, which is going to be great. Lost last year, of course. Jerry Jeudy actually played quite well, even though he had a case of the rookie drops. But let's not forget, Amari Cooper was horrendous his rookie year, according to the hype that he had coming in as a 1st-round pick. And we've seen him have an incredible career later, even with still some drops. So Jerry Jeudy should be just fine. Tim Patrick is there as well. But Seth Williams adds depth to open up the underneath for the tight ends, potentially Jeudy over the middle or the run game there with Javonte Williams. Now, Javonte Williams comes in as a early 2nd-round pick, almost basically a late 1st-round pick, essentially by 3 picks. Great duo with him and Michael Carter in North Carolina last year. Ran for 500 yards on Miami. He was a track star, valedictorian. Javonte Williams is absolutely the truth. Comes in he's a big-bodied running back, but he's very elusive. You don't see that very often with big body running backs, but he's able to get it done. Melvin Gordon sits in front of him now, but Melvin Gordon is aging. He was nicked up last year. He's been nicked up basically his entire career for 2 or 3 games. And we have seen over his career, when Melvin Gordon goes down, that running back behind him has made the most of it. Austin Eckler a few times with the Chargers, Phillip Lindsey last year. My boy Royce Freeman unfortunately wasn't able to get a chance, but Javonte Williams, he's a great pick right now in redraft and in Dynasty, of course. Even if you have to sit on him this year and Melvin Gordon gives you 10 to 14 games, I think Javonte Williams is the truth. I think Melvin Gordon's is gone next year. They got rid of Phillip Lindsey already. They bring in Mike Boone, who I think is a nice talent out of Minnesota, but he was 3rd on the depth chart there for a couple years as well, even when Dalvin Cook went down and didn't really get the opportunity. So outside of one quality game a couple years ago, Mike Boone hasn't done too much. So Javonte Williams and Seth Williams, both I think good pickups. Seth Williams is a 6th-round draft pick, so I wouldn't expect too much from him long-term, or immediately, I should say. But Javonte Williams is going to be an immediate pick. Curious, guys, where you were thinking in redraft, where you might look at Javonte Williams. In Dynasty rookie drafts, of course, he's a top 3 to 5 pick, depending on your things. But in redraft, where might you think you look to take Javonte Williams? If you think last year, some of those rookies, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, DeAndre Swift, those guys were going in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round, depending on how you felt about them. Are you that confident in Javonte Williams already, knowing that he's definitely going to be the backup coming into the season? Chris, we'll start with you.
I want to be confident. I'm not there yet. I haven't done too much analysis on the North Carolina schedule and Javonte Williams, I would say, effectiveness against defenses. I'm not quite sure how that division plays out. I think that the landing spot's really good for Javonte Williams. Obviously, as the RB2 on that team, I'm not exactly sure how Denver's offense is going to look with Drew Lock or potentially Teddy Bridgewater at the helm. And I think that's going to ultimately impact how they use the running game. So last year, I think that they were somewhere like in the middle of the pack against defenses with respect to like their rushing attack in general. I think they're like 13th in rushing attempts and maybe like somewhere in the middle with rushing yards overall. They're not like, I don't see them as being a threat in the run game. So I don't know if they're going to ease Javonte Williams into the mix or if they're going to lean heavily on their rushing attack, knowing that they do have Cortland Sutton back with Noah Fant and Jerry Jeudy. So my guess is, in order to keep up with the teams that are in the AFC West, they're probably going to have to throw the ball a lot more than they're used to. And that's Melvin Gordon territory as far as I'm concerned in the passing game. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm a little hesitant right now in Javonte Williams. I know that there are other people that are way higher than I am right now.
Yeah, they're about middle of the pack last year. I just looked it up, 437 rush attempts.
Yeah.
That was actually just ahead of the 49ers and right behind the Packers there. So middle of the road, about 4.3 yards per carry, about 120 yards per game. But again, they didn't have their star wide receiver to stretch the field. Defense was beat up as well. They were losing a lot of those games, so they weren't able to have game script. Their defense has improved tremendously, which I think will help. Their offensive line's gotten a little bit better. And bringing in Teddy Bridgewater, I don't think is going to bring them past the Chargers or the Chiefs, but I think it is going to keep them competitive for hopefully better game scripts. Eric, any thoughts here on the Broncos?
Yeah, so I want to preface it with the fact that I did have Williams as my RB2 even before the NFL draft. I did have him ranked in front of ETN.
Wow.
And I saw a lot of people that did have him as the RB1, but it was dependent on where that landing spot was. Now, obviously, the last collab that we did, we talked about Najee Harris going to Pittsburgh even before they drafted him. And obviously we were all very excited about that. And then he ended up, he did go to Pittsburgh. So I do have Najee as my rookie RB1. Right now I'd have to say ETN's probably my RB2, and then Williams, just because of the landing spot, I bumped him down to RB3. But you'd mentioned that Melvin Gordon was the age, and he's 28 years old. But while he was on the field last year, he was still moderately effective. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry. So I don't think he's completely washed yet. As far as redraft, I'm not too comfortable investing a high pick into Williams because I don't think Gordon's gone just yet. In Dynasty, I'm perfectly fine investing, I think he's probably going around the 107-ish mark in rookie drafts. That's perfectly fine with me. But in redraft, I'm not banking on any, immediate production from him. If Gordon goes down, I think he has a chance. But to Chris's point, Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock at the helm doesn't really get me, overly excited about any of the, the offensive players on that team.
Yeah, fair enough. And of course, we will revisit all this if Rod ends up leaving Green Bay, which I just don't think he does. But if he does, it sounds like the Broncos make the most sense. I've been trying to keep the receipts just in case that I think the Washington football team is actually a better spot for him to go. But I don't think they're going to keep him in the NFC if they get rid of him. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, that's the Broncos. Let's move on to the Chiefs here. They do not pick a skill player until the 5th round. They get Noah Gray out of Duke as a tight end and Cornell Powell out of Clemson in the 5th round. Look, we know what the Chiefs are. I love these picks, though, for long term. Like 2 or 3 years from now, if these guys stay healthy and they develop under Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and they stay in this offense here, Noah Gray, nobody's Travis Kelce. So, don't hear what I'm not saying. But if Travis Kelce were to go down, I think Noah Gray would be an adequate fill here. He basically broke all the Duke tight end records, which we know Duke is not exactly a football powerhouse. Nonetheless, big wingspan, a move tight end, a similar skills to Travis Kelce. And look, Travis Kelce coming out of Cincinnati was not somebody that fantasy people were excited about. Nobody knew about him. Nobody cared about him. He wasn't Travis Kelce till 2-3 years into his career, which we see all the time with tight ends. George Kittle was another one. So Noah Gray is a dynasty stash strictly. However, I do think he's a final pick at like the 18th, 19th, 20th round. You could do worse. And I think you have a rare tight end handcuff in that offense that feeds that position. So just throwing that name out there, Noah Gray out of Duke in the 5th round. Cornell Powell is another kind of a deep wide receiver. We know about these guys. Everybody knows about Tyreek Hill. Everybody wants Mecole Hardman to be that guy. We hear, Byron Pringle sounds like somebody in the Kansas City locker room that they really like, and they're talking up from the inside, which is great. My guy, Demarcus Robinson, is not really sexy, but he's always kind of that like Marvin Jones-esque guy that when he needs to be called on, Mahomes targets him for like 8 red zone targets a year. Unfortunately, only catches about 3 of them. But again, these are 2 deeper dynasty stashes. Not much changes here for the Chiefs. They just kind of reloading it going here. So not a lot with these rookies, but any quick thoughts on the Chiefs in general? Either way, go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like every time Casey has a decent backup. I think we saw the same thing with Mecole Hardman. Everybody wants him to be Tyreek Hill, the next Tyreek Hill. If Hill ever gets hurt, Hardman's going to step right in. Yeah. I hope that's not the case with Gray, but honestly, I think if you put me in at tight end on that team, I'd be pretty decent. So right. I'm not opposed to stashing any tight end behind Travis Kelce.
I like it.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Yeah. So I think this is one of these interesting conversations where, is it Travis Kelce being a good tight end, or is it the situation just, loving the tight end position? And can a tight end just kind of plug and play and put up productivity similarly to the way Travis Kelce has been? Obviously, we're not expecting any tight end, 1 overall numbers from Gray, but you never know. Like he has a very, similar stature, like 6'4", 240. He's a big guy. If he can route run and can block, guess what? I mean, you might have, a top 5 tight end in your hands in a couple of years.
Exactly. And often at the tight end position, you're looking to kind of stash guys anyway, especially late. And why not take a guy? I mean, look, Travis Kelce at the tight end position, he could play another 5 years and be totally fine. Will he play at this level another 5 years? Who knows? Tony Gonzalez, I've been hearing a lot of great stats, which I'm going to kind of compile when we get into team breakdowns later in the summer. But I've been hearing a lot about like what Travis Kelce has done so far in his career is absolutely fantastic. 31 years old, dude's a beast. But then you hear about Tony Gonzalez's career, and Tony Gonzalez from 31 to like 38 when he retired was Travis Kelce also. I mean, just so dominant. So at the tight end position, if he can stay healthy and he's a pass catcher, he can stay this dominant for a long time. It's all about the health. But again, just to mention a couple of names for the Chiefs, Noah Gray might be somebody to stash a little bit deeper. Okay. Also, I'll mention that early on, about a month ago, everybody was terribly worried about the Chiefs' offensive line that the Buccaneers absolutely made a joke of in the Super Bowl, but they have rinsed that out. They have quietly rebuilt arguably a better offensive line than last year. So the Chiefs will be just fine. CEH gets a bump. Mahomes, Hill, and Kelce remain who they are. And I do believe that the Chiefs will just be right back at it. They had a glitch in the system on the wrong day, unfortunately for them, on Super Bowl Sunday, but they have rectified that quickly, and I think they'll be just fine moving forward. All right, let's move into the Chargers, then I'll get into the Raiders here. I want to give a shout out to my man Rashawn Slater. So not a fantasy relevant name, but when you pick up the second graded offensive tackle and arguably the first, if you're not a Penei Sewell guy out of Oregon who opted out last year, you might have had Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, the offensive tackle, as your number 1 offensive tackle. If that's the case, the Chargers got an absolute steal here at number 13 to help out Justin Herbert. That is massive there. Going down the list here, Josh Palmer out of Tennessee, the wide receiver, and then Trey McKitty out of Georgia, both in the 3rd round. Josh Palmer is basically Mike Williams' replacement. I love Mike Williams. When he came in out of Clemson, I was super pumped on him. I've drafted him probably every single season, at least on one team, just in case. And for the 4 games that he plays, the dude's a monster. But he can't stay healthy. He just can't stay healthy. It would be great if every 6'4", 200-pound wide receiver, like some of these old school guys that we used to have, would produce that way and stay healthy, like a Brandon Marshall or something. But unfortunately, Mike Williams hasn't been able to. So keep an eye on Josh Palmer. Again, another deep dynasty name. And then Trey McKitty, I think he's going to be an awesome, maybe not this year, but next year. They got rid of Hunter Henry, and he goes to your New England Patriots. and they bring in Jared Cook, who is fine. And he's had a great career. He's been really valuable for fantasy for a long time, but he is well past 30 as well at the twilight of his career. So Trey McKitty might have a good opportunity here to sit for a year, spot play if Cook gets hurt, and then pop into a great opportunity. The Chargers overall like the tight end position. The new coaching staff out of Philadelphia and Indianapolis like the tight end position, and Justin Herbert, dating back his days here in Eugene at the University of Oregon, also likes the tight end position. So keep an eye there. Final name in the 6th round, Larry Roundtree out of Missouri, big body receiver or running back of a CJ Anderson, if you will. Look, nobody's doing anything as long as Austin Eckler is healthy, but if Eckler goes down, there's a lot of other guys there. And we saw last year, Joshua Kelly, rookie out of UCLA, just couldn't quite cut the mustard, and Justin Jackson couldn't stay healthy. So Larry Roundtree could have an opportunity here, another deep dynasty stash. Any thoughts on the Chargers here? Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this feels like a season that the Chargers are going to have to start defining who they are as a team. So I love the fact that they know that they had to obviously protect Justin Herbert. Like, this isn't like a secret, and they go out and get like a house in Rashawn Slater. This dude's like he's like the mountain
monster, dude.
He's just a big boy, and I'm super happy that they actually got, because I think the thing is like, unfortunately we were watching Joe Burrow go down with an ACL injury. And you can contribute that to likely, a weak offensive line. It's like, we want to see these, young kids have protection and be able to enjoy a full career that is, as injury free as possible. So guys like Slater are going to make sure that that happens. So super pumped. I think it's going to open up the entire offense. They're a north-south team anyways. And they're going to make some pretty big problems for the AFC West from what I can see. They're still super young. I would say like Josh Palmer, for example. I think that Eric, I'd be curious to get your opinion on this, because you're the Keenan Allen guy in our group here, but they have a young receiving core. Tyron Johnson and Jalen Guyton last year did a pretty good job filling in when Keenan Allen said on Thursday Night Football that he was going to play and then he didn't play. So, yeah, I think that guys like Josh Palmer are going to have their opportunities this year.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up Mike Williams, because this offseason I've been looking for like cheap guys to buy that I can slide into my flex box and some of my deeper dynasty leagues, and Mike Williams is actually one of the guys I was kind of targeting. And I wasn't paying much, but I was sending out maybe like late seconds for him to see if anybody would bite. He did have in the last two of the last 3 seasons, he did have either 1,000 yards or 10 touchdowns. And with Hunter Henry going, I know they replaced him with Jared Cook, but I don't think Jared Cook's nearly as good as Hunter Henry was. So I put a little bit more faith in Mike Williams this offseason. Josh Palmer, again, they do have Mike Williams, they do have Keenan Allen, but again, you have to look at Austin Eckler, who's pretty much their wide receiver 2 at this point, or if you want to call him the wide receiver 3. So even though he is the running back, he is probably one of the better pass catchers on the team. Palmer might have a chance to cut out a role, especially with the division they're in. They go up against the Chiefs. They go up against Denver, who's not great, but they do have some firepower on offense. Oakland's pretty good on I should say Las Vegas now. They're pretty good on offense. So I do think Herbert is going to have to pass the ball a ton. He did last year. So there should be volume to go around. Again, in redraft, I don't know if I'm going to take a high chance on Palmer, but in Dynasty, he's absolutely worth the stash.
Absolutely. And so many of these names we're talking about here, unless they're first, second, maybe third round capital, like they're not going to be redraft names. They're dynasty names, but it's important to bring them up because look, injuries happen, man. If one of these top guys go down, you need to know who's next in line, because sometimes rookies get an opportunity out of necessity and it's up to them to make or break it at that point. Oh, it'll be very interesting. Chris, you mentioned Jalen Guyton. I love Jalen Guyton. I watched a lot of Chargers. You guys know I live down the street from Autzen Stadium here. I watched Justin Herbert in high school, and I'm just a big fan of the kid in general. So I watched as much Chargers as possible. And Jalen Guyton, man, quietly is that deep threat opportunity. And Herbert can throw a rope at about 65 yards. So they have that deep threat. And if Mike Williams maybe turns into more of like an AJ Green, so he's like kind of a 10 to 15 yard range, Keenan Allen's Keenan Allen, and you get those other guys over the top. I think that might be a better scheme for the Chargers than counting on Mike Williams. So that should be better for everybody, and having Rashawn Slater there obviously will increase them. Okay, let's move on to the Raiders here, and then we'll take a quick break. The Raiders literally did not draft a skill player. That's right, folks. This team is going to be last in the division. 7 draft picks total, 0 on offense. They had Alex Leatherwood, which was a reach at 17. Then they had a safety, linebacker, safety, cornerback, and center. Yes, you heard me correctly. They drafted 3 safeties in 7 picks. Mike Mayock, who is supposed to be the guru of the NFL draft, still has yet to prove anything to me in 3 years, but we shall see. So I'm not going to talk about any of the Raiders draft picks. So let me turn really quick here, and let's talk about maybe a contentious topic, which is that backfield in Las Vegas. So we have Josh Jacobs, who we all know and love, and maybe not so much because I believe one of you yells at him on your intro, if I remember correctly, Eric, which I absolutely love. So Josh Jacobs right now has an ADP currently, and look, it's May. This is all going to shake out by August, so it's very early. Currently, he's going off as the RB15 in the back of pretty much the last pick of the second round, first pick of the third round. That's Josh Jacobs in full PPR. All the way down in the 7th round is Kenyon Drake going as the RB31 in about the early 7th round. So I ask both of you, if you were going to draft either one of these Raiders running backs, which one do you want? Are you going to take Josh Jacobs, who we have seen when healthy is quite effective, but he's also let you down quite a bit, going in the 2nd, 3rd round? Or are you looking to just take a flyer and hope to get upside value with Kenyon Drake as your RB4 probably at that point in the 7th round? Eric, I'll start with you because I know that you and Josh Jacobs have beef.
I hate to say it, but it might be karma. I mean, he might have had it coming to him. That's what you get for saying you don't care about fantasy football. But realistically, I see Kenyon Drake as probably more of the he's probably one of just the better handcuffs in the league to own now. So you got the Kareem Hunts. You got, like, I put out a tweet the other day about Gus Edwards, Tony Pollard, Madison. But Drake might have standalone value. He might be a guy that you could flex in if you're really desperate on some weeks with buys or injuries. I'm still going to draft Josh Jacobs. I don't have a choice. I own him in like 5 leagues, so I have to like him. I don't know if it's my bias talking, if I'm trying to convince myself or you guys. Yeah. I'm not sure. But I do think they brought him in more so for the fact that Jacobs has always been kind of banged up. As the season goes on, he does start to wear down. So I do think it's more of an insurance policy. They're trying to keep Jacobs fresh, especially now that the season got extended. We'll probably see more teams doing this, having more depth at the running back position just to keep these guys healthy. And I'm pretty sure he had this concern even dating back to college. He kind of got nicked up a lot. So I'm not overly worried about Kenyon Drake. I'm pretty sure the offense even said they're going to try to line him up at wide receiver. I don't know how that's going to work out, but as long as he's not in the backfield with Jacobs, I like that news.
Chris?
Yeah, I was actually just checking out Fantasy Pros guy while you were talking. They actually have him ranked here, Josh Jacobs, as running back 21. Yikes. So they have him just behind Chris Carson. So, and then right in front of Myles Gaskin. So if this is where he's being drafted, I actually don't mind that. Assuming that, I could probably get, especially in super flex leagues, a good tier quarterback, potentially, a running back 1, and then maybe Josh Jacobs as my running back 2 in round 3. That's not so bad. Like, I think if his ADP sticks around that area, I think that'll be worth it. There are running backs where you're going to reach for productivity and you're going to reach for them in the draft. That was Jacobs last year. That was a lot of running backs last year. So I think he's about where he wants or should be. If he starts moving up in ADP, I'm not going to touch him.
Okay, let's do rapid fire and we'll end out the AFC West. I'm going to give you a player or Josh Jacobs. Redraft, full PPR. Chris answer first. Eric answer second. X player or Josh Jacobs. Let's go with James Robinson.
I'll take James Robinson.
Jacobs.
DeAndre Swift.
Oh, Swift.
Antonio Gibson.
Gibson.
Mixon.
Jacobs.
Do I have to answer?
Fair enough.
I guess Mixon.
I'm mixing all day long. Couple more here. J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, I'll go Dobbins.
CEH.
Oh, I love CEH.
Okay. Bounce back.
Bounce back here. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess CEH.
I'm feeling it too. 2 more. Miles Sanders.
Jacobs.
I'll go Sanders.
And David Montgomery.
David Montgomery. At ADP, I'll go Montgomery.
I'll stick with Jacobs.
Wow. And I'm going to do one more just because Fantasy Pros is actually lower on them. They have them back-to-back. I'll go Chris Carson or Josh Jacobs. Full PPR.
I'll go Carson.
I'll go with Jacobs.
Ooh, I like it. All right, boys. That is the AFC West. Let me take a quick break, pay some bills. I'm going to kick you both off. Go ahead and get a water break, get a quick stretch in. We'll bring you back in about 1 minute here. I'm going to give a shout out to my friends at the Jersey Jungle. Y'all know how we do this. Big ups to the Jersey Jungle. Make sure you hit them up on Instagram to get your authentic game-ready jerseys, not just football. They have baseball, basketball. Of course, we have the play-in tournament starting tonight and this weekend. We have the NBA playoffs. We have the NHL playoffs. Baseball is underway now. Football, of course, never seems to stop. So hit up the Jersey Jungle, DM them at the Jersey Jungle to order your jerseys. Use the promo code TCK to receive 10% off of 1 or 2 jerseys or 15% off of 3 jerseys. If you look behind me here, you can see my Justin Herbert jersey. This is from the Jersey Jungle. It is a stitch and twill jersey. It's beautiful. You can see the nameplate that's printed on there. Not printed. It's sewn on there. The numbers sewn on as well. They got the bolts up on the front. They got the NFL logo. Fits perfectly. Love the jersey there on that side. I have many more as well. So once again, hit up the Jersey Jungle to get your jerseys, any sport, custom, home, away, at the Jersey Jungle on DM. Boy, Trenton will hit you up on Instagram. Take care of it. Use promo code TCK for 10 to 15% off of your 3 jerseys. And before we get back to the boys, I also want to give a shout out to Bomb Banana Hot Sauce, a new sponsor of the TCK pod. Promo code TCK for 10% off of your order. Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. Banana-based hot sauce, not banana-flavored hot sauce. SeekTheSpice.com. 10% off with promo code TCK. You can put this on all of your draft snacks. You can put this on any of your other things. They have 2 flavors here. You can see the Muy Muy with the red is a little bit more spice, and the white here is a little bit more on the tame side, which I prefer. Lots of flavor here. 4 students at the University of Michigan. Shouts out to the Wolverines. Started this up in their dorm room, made it a big-time business, and they just had a featured article in Forbes magazine. That's right, folks, the Forbes magazine. Shouts out to our Bomb Banana family here. Excellent, excellent taste. Again, banana-based hot sauce, not banana-flavored. Go to SeekTheSpice.com for 10% off. Use the promo code TCK pod. We'll bring the boys back in here and we'll get into the AFC East. Once again, Chris and Alex, excuse me, I'm so used to saying it. Chris and Eric, I apologize. Chris and Eric of the Commish Fantasy Football Podcast. Check them out on all the avenues, and they have their own podcast as well. I've been blessed to be on their show a number of times. Always a pleasure. Gentlemen, let's jump in here to the AFC East. So you guys are proud Patriots fans. I do have a couple of Patriot questions at the end here, but I want to get into the division as a whole. Bills, Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots. You guys decide how you want to do. If you want to bounce teams off one or the other, I'll let you flow. You do your thing. Once you're ready, I'll give you my feedback. Once you kick it off, pick a team, and let's get rolling here with the AFC East.
Shall we start with Brian's team, Eric? The Dolphins?
Let's do it.
All right, so that's a little reference to our boy Brian, who is the host with RJ over on the Dynasty side with the Commish team. RJ will be with Sky in the subsequent episode, but Brian is a well-known diehard Dolphins fan, so had to give him a little shout-out here. So, all right, looking at the Dolphins, they obviously had several pretty big needs, but the biggest need in general was to get to weapons. And they went and did that, right? So they go and get Jalen Waddle, reconnects with Tua. It seemed like the whole NFL draft was a reconnection party. So in this case, Jalen Waddle is going to fit nicely with the Miami Dolphins. They're going to start to get some identity. They're going to be a compliment to Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams. I like that offense right now. They feel kind of like a mid-draft draft team. Like, I'm not going to go out of my way to draft any of these guys on the Dolphins within my first 3 to 4 picks. But comes around like 5 and 6 and 7, a lot of these players, depending on dynasty or redraft, start to look pretty nice depending on the type of league that you're in. So I think, Eric, you mentioned Myles Gaskin. This is going to complement Myles Gaskin pretty greatly. Whether or not, he lasts the entire season, we'll kind of, defer that till they, pick up another running back. But in general, I think the signing of Jalen Waddle, first and foremost, was their biggest issue, and they go and get someone along with offseason pickups like Will Fuller.
Yeah, so I'll piggyback on that too. So Tua last year ranked 30th in the league in yards per attempt with 6.3. So he definitely wasn't stretching the field by any means, which is why I think they went out and they got speedsters like Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle. Now, I think Jalen Waddle is better talent than probably anybody they have in their roster right now. And I saw a lot of the debates this offseason were Waddle or Devontae Smith. Obviously, Smith won the Heisman, but a lot of people did have Jalen Waddle ranked higher. And now that Smith did end up going to Philly, I know a lot of people aren't believers in Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Waddle's been going higher than Smith in pretty much every rookie draft that I've been in. I've seen Waddle go higher. So to Chris's point, in redraft, I do think Waddle can immediately carve out a role in that offense. I think he's better than Preston Williams. I think he's better than Devontae Parker. And he'll probably even challenge Will Fuller for that deep threat role. So I don't mind taking a flyer on Jalen Waddle as you get to those, 6th, 7th, or 8th round picks in redraft, maybe as your wide receiver 3 or 4.
I like that. I like that. And Jalen Waddle is going to be interesting, man. He was totally overshadowed last year, specifically by Devonta Smith at Alabama. And Jalen Waddle wasn't able to play in the national. Well, he kind of played, but he hurt his foot. He tried to come in. It just wasn't going to work. And Devonta Smith at the same time was going over 200 yards in the first half, blowing him out of the water. So we'll see what happens. But look, Jalen Waddle is that deep threat guy. We'll see if he and Will Fuller can coexist. There's some talk a little bit that if they can put Jalen Waddle in the slot, which is what Tua prefers, their former teammates at Alabama, if Jalen Waddle can hit the slot, they put Devontae Parker out on the outside and Will Fuller on the outside to stretch. And if our boy Preston Williams can ever stay healthy, they do have a lot of weapons, and Jalen Waddle might be the first look if he's in the slot. And he's one of those guys, like the Raiders didn't use Henry Ruggs properly last year. That's why he feels like a bum, because they didn't use him properly. If they can get this guy a slant for 5 yards, breaks a tackle from a linebacker, and get to the open field, he could be, one of these, Juju Smith-Schuster's rookie year where he can break some big plays here. So I think that's his best bet with Jalen Waddle. Hunter Long is a name that I think is kind of a sleeper a little bit. Again, dynasty specifically, but coming out of Boston College, backing up Mike Gesicki, I think is a great move here. This dude has the biggest wingspan of anybody in the draft, which is just good for tight ends. Not a freak athlete by any means, but certainly a quality, like a Mark Andrews style tight end prospect in the 3rd round. So they should be using him quickly. And the 49ers, excuse me, no, it's the Jets. I misspoke. I apologize. And then Jared Stokes coming out of Cincinnati as well. 7th round, he's a flyer, but again, another deep. We just mentioned Myles Gaskin. This could be one of those guys that has a couple good practices, a couple good spring games, and all of a sudden he's number 2, number 3. Somebody gets hurt, and this kid could work his way up the depth chart here. So the Dolphins are all systems go. And look, if your Patriots don't come to work this year, the Dolphins could certainly be right behind the Bills.
They always seem to come ready to work with us. It's like, yeah, Pats always play pretty poorly against the Dolphins. We always give them some good games against them. But one thing I'll add here, just to wrap this up on the Dolphins, if you are a believer in Tua, I feel like there's no one like in between on the Tua conversation. You're either for Tua or you're just not feeling him at all. For what it's worth, the Dolphins in general were 13th in drives ending in scoring drives, which to me is extremely positive based off of Eric's correlation on the fact that Tua himself just wasn't really stretching the field at all. So the fact that they were, above the fold in terms of scoring efficiencies with the weapons that they had last year, and they seem to be better this year picking up those pieces, I think that this does favor and lean towards a better team with Tua and these weapons. So could ultimately work out well for Dynasty. Redraft as well.
Now I'll push back on that really quick and wonder if that was the Dolphins stat or was that a Tua stat? because let's not forget that Ryan Fitzpatrick, I'm going to guess, was at least 50% of that, probably more. So if you're talking the offense in general, and it was Ryan Fitzpatrick who was, yes, he's careless with the ball. Yes, he throws picks and blah, blah, blah. But if we're able to get Tua the same work, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was the one actually making a lot of those drives happen. And let's not forget, okay, we don't talk kickers ever. I want to give a shout out to Jason Sanders, who he was far and away the best kicker in fantasy football for like the entire season last year. So when scoring drives, were those all 43-yard kicks, or were those touchdowns by Tua, or were they touchdowns by Fitzpatrick? So I'm not like a Tua hater per se, but I want to put that in perspective that that's not necessarily a Tua stat. That's the offense in general, which is good for Tua this year, but it may not be reflective of what Tua did last year.
No, I agree with you, right? And I actually don't have that breakdown. So it is a good point to make, and it's something worthwhile for us to check into. But I do think what it's representative of is that as a team in general, that they have weapons enough to break the top half of the NFL. When you look at them from a depth chart perspective, you're not like, even last year, like I wasn't quite impressed. Like I think, Sky, you and I had a conversation about where are we going to rank Preston Williams and Devontae Parker, and we had them like wide receiver 30 and 31 or something, like back to back. Like that's not what you would expect out of a team that is above the fold in scoring efficiency, regardless of who the quarterback is. So I think the overall point here is that, with a year under the belt, they're obviously chips all in on Tua. They bring in some veteran pieces. They go and get Jalen Waddle, who Tua is familiar with. It's like these things should ultimately, as again, if you're a Tua advocate, let's say this should make it more acceptable for you to go out and trust these offseason moves.
Cool. I know you guys don't want to hear this as Patriots fans, but as somebody that's been following the NFL for almost 30 years, the Dolphins have been good once or twice in my lifetime as a football fan. So I'd like to see them turn it around here, and they definitely have shines. And I think they're a young franchise, good coaching staff, great building blocks. And it's funny. You just said nobody's in between on Tua. I'm not a Tua hater. I'm also not a Tua believer, to be honest. So like
you're that guy.
I think he can do it. I saw him do it at Alabama. I saw him do him in spurts. I also haven't seen the like when Jameis Winston was throwing for 5,000 yards and 33 touchdowns. I was kind of like, yeah, but like, is he that good? And I don't know. I need to see it more from Tua, but I do like the Dolphins overall. Okay, man, let's move on to another team here from the AFC East. Who you got for us?
All right, so I'm gonna let's touch on the Bills here. Why don't we? They didn't make a ton of moves here in terms of draft picks. They got they went out and got Marquez Stevenson out of Houston as a wide receiver, but they didn't really make too many other moves because really their biggest need was on the defensive line. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they really don't. They have weapons. They have their their franchise quarterback. Depending on how you feel about their running backs, not their biggest need, but really their biggest need was defensive line and offensive line, which they go and address with their first 4 picks in the draft. So overall, not much to talk about in terms of rookies, but I will say one guy that I'm looking for a potential jump this year is Gabriel Davis. I think with, Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, these older receivers, I think Gabriel Davis makes a jump. He had 17, low-key had 7 touchdowns last year. He was actually 7th in yards per reception at 17.1 in the league. It's pretty good. It's very underrated. I think he makes a pretty big step. He's 6'2". He's a pretty big body. So I actually see him playing that outside role to opposite of Stefon Diggs, where Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley will play the inside slot roles. That'll kind of help Emmanuel Sanders from not getting hurt since he's a bit older. So, yeah, I think as far as, again, not a lot to talk about with rookies, but Gabriel Davis being a young player, I can see him being a nice stash in deeper leagues, especially for redraft, on an offense that will be scoring a lot of points this season.
I love that. I totally agree. And, Diggs is Diggs, but any of those other wide receivers in redraft, look, Beasley and Davis, as you mentioned, and Emmanuel Sanders, nobody's looking to draft those guys. And any one of them, all of them could be fantasy relevant. And even though you don't want to think of it this way, you have to have a quality second flex, wide receiver 4 or 5. One of the things Lucas preaches so much on this podcast is at the end of the day, you need fantasy points, and everybody wants the sexy, random sleeper bench guy that's going to be, putting up 25 points for you that nobody knew about. Like, of course we all want that guy, but you know what else you need? You need somebody like Marvin Jones or Robert Woods, who just is like not going to put up 25, but they're never going to put up less than 16 in PPR. Like right. Those Julian Edelman forever, right? I mean, he did have a couple explosive games if he ended up scoring a touchdown randomly, but it was usually just 8 catches, 80 yards. That's 16 points. If he happens to score, he blows up your team, right? So don't lose track of guys in great offenses with a great quarterback and are moving the ball constantly. You talked about the Dolphins and how proficient they were in scoring drives. I don't have the list in front of me, Chris. I'm sure the Bills were way up the list as well in drives ending in touchdowns, let alone scoring. So Stephon Diggs is going to be, a top 5 wide receiver. Josh Allen, arguably the number 2 quarterback, if depending on your scoring settings. I think you can make a case of him maybe as number 1 if you're playing 4-point passing touchdowns. But those other guys, let's not lose focus. And this defense got improved as well. So, man, the Bills could be running this division here for quite a while. All right, man, you got 2 more teams. Who's the next one?
All right, so I'll just make a note to the audience here. We did lose Eric, unfortunately. He just texted me and said he had Wi-Fi issues. So it'll be Sky and I will be soldiering on. So, all right, we're going to leave the Patriots for last. So let me dive into the Jets here. And I'm kind of, bummed out that Eric can't be on this one because he actually had a great tweet the other day from the Commish Twitter handle. And he basically stated, as a Pats fan, he basically said, I'm like very sad to see the Jets having had a great draft. So their biggest need was to get rid of Adam Gase, and they go out and they do that. They get Robert Saleh, and from there they have a phenomenal draft. They go out and get Zach Wilson. Again, regardless of where you think Zach Wilson should have been drafted or who he should have been drafted by, he's still a good quarterback. And hopefully, again, for Jets fans, he makes a pretty good impact and stays healthy. Because to be fair, they don't really have anybody besides Zach Wilson on that team in terms of the depth chart. But with that, they go out and get Vera Tucker out of USC. They go out and get wide receiver Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss. And if you remember, there's some good track records with Ole Miss wide receivers in the NFL right now, in A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf. So I think there's a lot of upside here with Elijah Moore, potentially opposite of Jamison Crowder. And they go out and get Michael Carter out of North Carolina, who I think a lot of people feel is like equivalent to a Javonte Williams, his counterpart at North Carolina. But you get him, 5 or 6 rounds later or whatever it is, right, in the 5th or 6th round. So, then they go and sign Tevin Coleman, Corey Davis. I mean, this team feels like the Chargers last year almost, or kind of one of these up and coming teams. Really, this is gonna, it's gonna hinge on whether or not Zach Wilson can step up and play in the NFL in what's becoming a very strong division. And even in the AFC in general, they have a pretty tough schedule. So yeah, this will come down to Zach Wilson and Elijah Moore and Jamison Crowder and Corey Davis's fantasy futures are going to basically depend on whether or not he can get them the ball.
I'm so excited to see what Robert Saleh can do. And shouts out to my boy Mike Nicolini as well, who nobody knows yet, but he will be a coordinator someday in the league. High school friend of mine, childhood friend of mine. He is the get back coach. He's the dude that keeps Robert Saleh on the sideline, but he got pulled over from San Francisco as well. Mike LaFleur as well, offensive coordinator there. So basically the 2 main focuses for the 49ers organization, calling plays at least, are now with the Jets. Really excited to see what they do there. And look, I mean, Zach Wilson, man, they threw him into the fire. This is a kid coming from BYU, drop him into New York City by day and then New Jersey by night. I mean, we'll see what happens with Zach Wilson, but I wish him the best. Elijah Moore's the truth. Michael Carter's the truth. I totally agree with you. Elijah Vera Tucker, I love the shout out there, USC guard. And then even, deeper down the draft, they also picked up a couple of cornerbacks and safeties as well. So Robert Saleh is getting his guys, and they know it's a project there. One thing about great staffs is they know that the Jets have been the Jets our entire lives, right? Other than the 2 years on accident when Brady was hurt. Other than that, they've been bottom of the league, bad. They know that it's going to take 2 to 3 to 4 years to turn this franchise around. The Patriots are going to be the Patriots as long as Bill's there, at least. the Bills are obviously running the division out, and the Dolphins are getting very good. But if the Jets can improve the way that this draft and this coaching staff can happen in the next 3 or 4 years, this could, rival one of the best divisions in the league, which is hilarious because for the last 20 years, man, your Patriots have been making a mockery of all of these teams for 20 years. But look, I mean, the guard has changed, and we'll see what happens here. So we'll see what happens with the Jets, but I really am excited to see what my boys LaFleur and Robert Saleh can do, and Mike Nicolini as well. So they're kind of I've been calling the Browns my AFC Niners. But I'll give like a 1B to the New York Jets. Maybe I'll be a pseudo fan over there just to root on for those guys. All right, man. Well, that leaves the Patriots last but not least, of course. So go in on your Pats here.
Yes, sir. So for the first time in 21, 22 plus years, the Pats go and spend money. So prior to the actual,
and a lot of it, by far the most in the NFL.
They broke out the Brinks truck. So before the draft, they actually go and address pretty much all of their offensive needs for the most part and some of their defensive needs. So the draft felt more like just kind of adding to the holes that they definitely have in this draft, right? So, or I should say on the team. So obviously with their number 1 pick, which we'll talk about this a bit further, they go out and get Mac Jones. But then they start to address areas of the team that are not necessarily fantasy relevant or position players. So a lot on the defense, defensive tackles, defensive ends, Ronnie Perkins out of Oklahoma, Christian Barmore out of Alabama, a lot of Alabama guys, safeties, offensive tackles, they get linebackers. So they really, they start shoring up those areas that Bill loves to, pick at. They surprisingly didn't trade back. They didn't really make moves during the draft, which is, unlike Bill. But so far this offseason has been an unlike Bill Belichick type of scenario, which is actually kind of good because, in other words, it's like the is it the definition of insanity when you keep doing the same things and, you get the same results?
Yeah, the same results. Yep.
Exactly. So in this case, he realizes, you don't have the luxury of, a Tom Brady to cover up holes. So he goes out and starts fixing some of these areas. So I'm super excited to see what this offense is going to do. Now it's whether or not, who starts. I personally think it'll be Cam Newton, Mac Jones has already said that, this is Cam's team. My guess is that, with the signing of Brian Hoyer, it's going to be Jarrett Stidham will be, he'll be cut likely during training camp. You're not going to have 4 quarterbacks on the team. But I will say this, look, the offense itself was lacking pretty significantly in a lot of different areas. They were, for like the first time, I think in 30 years, the team was top heavy in rushing attack, rushing offense in general, but then they were 30th in passing attempts, 30th in yards in the passing game, not a lot of touchdowns over the air. Obviously, they go out and grab Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. What's interesting about this is that, again, you think about Robert Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez and, even some of their, Ben Watson, back in the day, some of these other tight ends that, were pretty notable. They had 18 total catches from tight ends in 2020 last year, total. So it's like you get that on a game and a half from Jonnu Smith and or Hunter Henry. It's like all of a sudden, you're going to be able to run 2 tight end sets. You have Kendrick Bourne. I know that some people don't like Nelson Aguilar, but he is a veteran wide receiver. And I'm going to say this, remember the name Gunnar Olszewski.
Yeah, dude.
Bill tends to like little white receivers, and that's what Gunnar Olszewski is. And that's just, that's what he'll bring to the table. And then all of a sudden you've got Damien Harris, who I think is going to be leading the backfield instead of Sony Michel. So you have what looks to be a fairly solid offense, but funny enough, right now the Patriots rank last in fantasy appeal. So, So I don't know. I really don't know how this is going to shake out. I think there's uncertainty in the QB position probably adds to that. Again, I've seen stats where, people expect Mac Jones to come out and play week 1, or it's going to be Cam Newton and we'll see Mac Jones in 2022. So yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I just kind of, brain dumped a lot of stuff on you. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just looked up Damien Harris. His ADP right now is RB 32 in PPR. He's early 7th round, basically around Kenyon Drake, Najee Harris, Mike Davis, AJ Dillon, Leonard Fournette area. This is going to be interesting. I mean, they've been a pain in the ass forever, right? It's like James White has James White role, and then 4 other dudes have the ability to be Jonas Gray or nobody on any given week.
Yeah, exactly.
Other than LeGarrette Blount, who also had like a role years ago.
Yeah.
But Damien Harris could be that guy, another Alabama running back. You just mentioned, I mean, Saban and Bill Belichick are well established to be streamlined, right? Like Bill likes Alabama players because they play pro style. Saban is a pro style coach. They're basically a professional football team.
It's like
in college.
Yeah, it's like the AAA system for the Patriots.
It's 100% the AAA system. It's a great call. It's what it is. Bill likes that, and he's tried and true. They have, over the last decade, that would be a great study or stat for you as a Patriots fan. Go through the last 10 years, 20 years maybe of Bill Belichick's career, and maybe 10 since Saban's been in Alabama, but last 10 years, how many Patriots have Alabama players have the Patriots drafted? I would be very interested. But look, the Gunner situation is interesting because, I think where you hit the nail on the head with that is he may not be Julian Edelman this year, but he might be Julian Edelman in 3 years because he also started on special teams, just like which nobody remembers Julian Edelman was on special teams while Wes Welker was still Wes Welker, right? So it's really important that Bill Belichick takes advantage of these players that like need to make the team, and then once they make the team, then he's like, okay, Gunner's a football player and he happens to have wide receiver traits. Let's put him into this position. That's how it's going to work for him. And if he can do that, he can do that. Wes Welker was not incredible out of Texas Tech. Julian Edelman was certainly not incredible coming out with 7th round, I believe. Yeah, quarterback. Exactly. Thank you. So that'll be interesting there. The tight ends, look, I mean, that's going to be really interesting. I'm going to check up their ADP while we're talking here. That is going to be very interesting because I am not sure which one I believe that Bill will count on, and I'm not sure which of these, if either of them, I'm going to actually want. Right now, the ADP and PPR, tight end 7, Hunter Henry at the end of the 7th round, and tight end 14 in the end of the 11th round is Jonnu Smith. I got to be honest, bro, I would probably have him switched.
I agree with you. I was just going to say that. Yeah, I actually love Hunter Henry, but I mean, again, Bill likes to fuck with people, so I don't know, take this with a grain of salt. But right now, Jonnu Smith's above Hunter Henry on the depth chart. So again, we haven't really started anything yet, but these small things could matter as the season progresses. Well, and
maybe, and I know, I want to be careful with this Gronk and Hernandez thing. Like that's just never going to happen again. What they had for that single season was immaculate, and the way they used them, and both those guys were just phenomenal for that 1 year. It's not impossible for two tight ends to produce. I mean, we saw Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz both be top 8 or 10 a few years ago, right? But I think like Jonnu Smith to me is kind of probably the Aaron Hernandez, where he's like not as great of a blocker, but extremely athletic. And Hunter Henry is athletic, but Gronk athletic, but more of an inline blocker and maybe more reliable in the red zone or more veteran personality, whatever. If they can kind of like squish that into one, I think they're going to be just fine. So
I agree with you. Yeah. I think also, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, it's going to be interesting who people take. And this is kind of crazy, but if you were to like, say you pass on the first 5 or 6 tight ends and you have Hunter Henry and you get him in, let's just say like the 8th round, and you're like, I got running backs, got wide receivers. Maybe even I have a quarterback. I'm going to take Hunter Henry. We'll see what happens. If Jonnu Smith just gets forgotten in single tight end leagues, he's 14. He's not even getting drafted right now as a backup. You get him in like the 12th, 13th round and you get both Patriot tight ends. Yeah. It's going to be tough to start one of them, but if either one of those guys go down, I think there's serious upside.
Yeah, I agree with you. I actually do think, though, to your point, like I can see a Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz scenario here. I mean, not saying that either of them are going to be top 5 tight ends, but I can see both of them jumping in at like, tight end 9, tight end 10. Like there's a reason why Bill decided to go get 2 of them. Not just because we've seen it work in New England, with Gronk and Hernandez, but that was with Tom Brady. It was a different type of offense, but the idea of the 2 tight end set is it makes a lot of basically it produces a lot of complications for the defense. They're going to have to defend. The linebackers are going to have to split up, defend 2 very athletic tight ends or block for the running game. And both of them are very good. They're big bodied tight ends. And then you have, a bunch of, effectively small receivers running all over the field, in Gunnar Olszewski and Kendrick Bourne, and then you have some good athletic running backs in the backfield. This is going to be a pretty tough offense. I know, again, it's not appealing for fantasy purposes, but I definitely wouldn't sleep on them. And depending on the matchup of that week, if a team's not, struggling against tight ends, guess who's going to exploit that? It's going to be Bill Belichick, and all of a sudden Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith feel like good options. So
if you're watching on YouTube really quick, my lights have gone out, so I'm in my dungeon, but everything's fine. I think I'm still live on the air, but my lights have gone out, so I'm gonna wrap it up here. Chris, I'm gonna do a little bit more him or him. That's what we'll call this game, all right? I'm gonna do it with both tight ends. We'll whip through this really quickly, and we'll get out of here. Hunter Henry or Noah Fant.
I'll take Hunter Henry right now. I mean, I like Noah Fant, but I don't know. I don't trust Drew Lock.
Logan Thomas.
I'll take Logan Thomas.
Evan Ingram.
Damn. I'll take Evan Ingram.
Kyle Pitts. This is redraft. PPR.
I'll take Kyle Pitts.
Dallas Goedert.
I'll take Hunter Henry.
Okay. Same names with Jonnu Smith here. We'll go Jonnu Smith or Logan Thomas.
I'll take Logan Thomas, yeah.
Jonnu or Noah Fant?
I'll take Jonnu.
Evan Ingram.
Evan Ingram. This guy's like a thorn on my side.
Let's throw Gronk in there. Gronk or Jonnu?
I'll take Gronk. Why not?
There you go. Kyle Pitts?
I'll take Kyle Pitts, yeah.
And Dallas Goedert?
I'll take Jonnu. Yeah, I'll take Jonnu.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling. I think it's going to be like a safe option is going to be Hunter Henry. Upside is going to be Jonnu Smith. And look, if it's Cam Newton, honestly, like I know it's not sexy, but Cam Newton was dominant for the first 3 weeks of the season. Nobody's drafting him in redraft. You could pick him up in the 15th round. You could probably get Jonnu a round before that. And if you're waiting on late tight end, late quarterback, the Patriots could get you through a few weeks at least to work the waiver wire in a single quarterback league. It'd be very interesting. Chris, man, it's always a pleasure to have you on. I appreciate you jumping in and getting in through our episode here of the rookie rundown for the AFC East and the AFC West. Unfortunately, we did lose Eric, but we'll get him back on as soon as possible. And of course, Alex is always welcome as well. Before we get out of here, man, please remind the TCK Potters we can find all your guys' content.
Yeah, absolutely. We obviously run a pod, the Commish Fantasy Football Podcast, and then you can go check us out over at our website, www.thecomishbrand.com. And of course, all of our social media handles at the Commish FFP. We have a bunch of subsidiary social media networks, the Dynasty content that we're producing, and we always say go follow at Josh_FF. He's our weekly contributor on the article writing side and really kind of fills in the gaps for the team. So we're building up a nice little core here. So definitely go check it out. You'll hear different voices on the podcast: Brian, RJ, myself, Eric, Alex, Desmond on the bets side when we start actually developing and getting bets going again. So overall it's been fun working with the team, dude, and obviously being on part of the Candlestick Kids podcast as well. It's been great to build these connections.
Excellent, man. Well, you guys are always welcome. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to doing it more often. For the TCK Potters out there, make sure to subscribe right here to the YouTube channel. Leave us a comment of who you believe will maybe be the best rookie out of the 2 divisions that we talked about, AFC West and East. Make sure to leave a rate and review anywhere you listen to the podcast, and make sure to follow us on social media. Give us a like and a follow on those channels. You can find me on Twitter at my name, Sky Guasco. You can find Chris Benavides at his name on Twitter as well. And you can find the Commish brand on all networks at the Commish FFP. Of course, go check out their podcast as well. Want to give a shout out one more time to the Jersey Jungle, DM at the Jersey Jungle for authentic game ready jerseys. Hit up my man Trenton on Instagram at the Jersey Jungle. And I want to give a shout out to Bomb Banana Hot Sauce, banana based hot sauce, not flavored, banana based hot sauce. Chris, before we go, are you a spice guy or less spice? I'm personally more flavor, less spice. How about you?
I'm a little bit that way too. I am Portuguese, so the spice does hit once in a while. My fiance, on the other hand, she likes all of her food spicy, like to the point where you're losing flavor. That's to me where it's like a balance, right? Like when it starts to go a little too far, it's like that's a little too much spice, and so I get shamed for that. So how about that?
I draw the line at when the taste diminishes because of the heat and it's ruining my meal, that's enough for me. I don't need to struggle through a meal. I want to enhance the meal. I don't want to struggle through a meal. I feel you, man. Shouts out Bomb Banana Hot Sauce. Go check it out. Seekthespice.com. Shouts out to the Commish FFP. Love you, boys. 389 in the books for my man Chris Benavides and Eric, wherever he may be this evening. I'm your host, Sky Guasco, and we are out of here.